Delighted to say I'm joined by two-time All-Ireland winner Jamesie O'Connor. He's here on behalf of Sky Sports, who will be the home of GAA over the coming months with a total of 18 fixtures broadcasting on Sky Sports Arena, 12 of which are exclusive to Sky Sports. Jamesie, there's been a lot of hoo-ha in Clare the last few weeks. We're back in action this weekend against Dublin. I think it's a tasty enough fixture. Are you looking forward to just getting past all the talk, the COVID talk, all that kind of stuff, and getting back into action?
Yeah, I mean, look, Shane, I still think there are questions that maybe that haven't been satisfactorily answered. There's still, I think, a lot of, surprise in Clare as to how, the two lads were singled out as close contacts in the circumstances, and I don't think we've got a satisfactory answer. But yeah, look, from I suppose the hurling perspective, all this external noise is not good for the players. It's certainly not helpful in terms of their preparations down the line for the championship, and they have a big game with Dublin at the weekend. 2 points badly needed, and Dublin with their tails up a little bit as well, and going to be formidable opposition. So yeah, big game, and hopefully some of the players that Brian hasn't had available to him, through injury, Dave McInerney, Tony Kelly's still injured. Hopefully those guys making progress and getting that bit closer to getting back on the pitch, because we certainly can't afford to be without some of the players that we haven't had available. Yeah,
and do you think for Brian Lohan do you think it's affected him at all in terms of trying to put the team out when there's all the conversations over the several months about Cahir Lohan, the county board support, even like an interview coming up in our game with Shawnee McMahon, and he reckons the county board needs to support the team more. And now this situation where players are named as close contact. Is he the sort of character where this will bother him, or he's single-minded and he'll blast ahead anyway?
He's single-minded. I mean, Brian, there's no agenda with Brian. I mean, he wants what's best for the players. Listen, as a player, Shane, there was no one more dedicated, no one more committed, no one trained harder than Brian Lohan. And, and he expects the same from his players. But like, we operated in an environment with Lohan where, we wanted for nothing. We felt that, we were as well prepared and had anything we needed at our disposal. And listen, that's what players want. You don't want to feel that, you don't have access to the same services the Limerick lads have, or the Tip lads have, or the Kilkenny lads have. And I certainly, look, I like to hold my hand up. My wife, Brian, asked her, she's an accountant, to come on board as treasurer with Club Clare. And I can't believe some of the things that Brian Lohan has had to spend time, concerns, worries, looking for things that certainly you'd say Liam Sheedy or John Kiley or Brian Cody, aren't fighting to get those things. And that's a challenge. And certainly, we spent most of the winter making headlines for the wrong reasons. I know Dalo came out and spoke very strongly about it. Shawnee probably has strong opinions. I have strong opinions. And, there's no agenda here, Shane. This is about what's best for Clare hurling. And I mean, Cahir Lohan is not fit for purpose. I spoke to somebody, who's, who saw the pitch, and I think it was cut maybe for, the clubs had access to it. And, as you look at it, maybe it might look okay, but the problem is the surface and the playing surface, and there's no pace off it, and it's no preparation for, the speed of the ball off the turf in Croke Park or Páirc Uí Chaoimh or Thurles or wherever you're playing the championship matches in. So it's one of several issues, and certainly the close contact situation a couple of weeks ago was another headache that Brian probably could have done without.
I get the sense when some of the former players are talking about the current setup that they're somewhat reluctant to give it both barrels, which is understandable too, because you don't want to necessarily draw all these headlines on you, your day job and all that kind of stuff. But it feels like there's a sense out there that a lot involved with the county board that they're kind of maybe stuck in the old days and holding Clare back. So, I mean, is it fair to say there's probably a lot you want to say, but you almost feel like you can't?
Listen, maybe, Shane. Again, like a lot has been said. We all know that this committee has been appointed, and I think there's some great people on that committee, some progressive, forward-thinking people, and they're obviously, working very hard and hopefully getting access to what they need to get from the board. Again, look, this is all about the long-term, future of Clare and Clare hurling. And the betterment of it. I certainly have no agenda. Look, my young fellas involved in the development squads. I want what's best for him. There's great people doing a lot of great work on the ground, but are they being supported to the extent that they could or should be or need to be? And I have a concern, Shane, that like when Tony Kelly and Colm Galvin and John Conlon and Dave McInerney and a lot of those great under 21 players, that are, leading the senior team at the moment, when these guys retire and they're now maybe heading into latter parts of their careers, have we a next wave coming behind to take their places? And I don't know if we've done enough to make sure that that's the case. And we don't want to fall off a cliff, because Limerick aren't coming back to the pack, and everybody else is busting the gut to match the standards that they're setting. So we just want what's best for the county, and a lot of those questions are being asked for the right reasons. And as I said, this committee is going to produce a report, Shane. I'm sure there'll be plenty of recommendations on it, and the key is that doesn't sit in the shelf gathering dust, that there's action taken, and that those proposals or those recommendations or whatever's in that report gets acted upon. And as I said, we hopefully get back on the right track and heading in the right direction, because as I said, the bar is getting ever higher, and if you stand still, you run the risk of being left behind. And
if you look in the past decade or more, the success that you had at minor and under 21 level, both Munster and All Ireland level, was incredible. And you probably just haven't gotten enough value out of it. So a two-part question. Number one, do you think that the current team, well, there's a couple of parts to the question, but is there that feeling of falling off the cliff like Offaly did? Is there a real concern of that? Number two, you talked about your own young fella being involved with development squads. Do you see talent coming that, if it's nurtured properly, that Clare can get back to where they want to be?
Yeah, I think I look at that. There's definitely talent in the in the county, but there's talent in Cork, plenty of it. There's talent in Kilkenny, there's talent in Tipperary, but it's about, I suppose, harnessing that talent and putting maybe the right structures in place to maximise and give those young fellas every opportunity to reach their potential and ultimately go on and represent their county at minor 21 and ultimately senior level. So as I said, look at Shane, there's a lot of good work, but really good work been done on the ground, by the people involved with the squads. So that maybe answers that question. In terms of the worry about falling off the cliff, well, I mean, who would have said, if you would ask any Offaly person, in 1998, would they be where they are now? They'd have probably laughed at you. But clearly people did take their eye off the ball in Offaly, and there is that famous story, I think, about a report been left to gather dust on the shelf, and recommendations that were made not been acted upon. And as I said, if you take your eye off the ball, and if you stop putting in the work, and whether that's with your club or whether it's with your region or your county, Shane, other people are working very, very hard, and you're going to simply get overtaken and get left behind. And that's a real concern. And whether that's, I mean, in Flannan's even, again, and I'd have been maybe guilty about it, maybe we maybe weren't working as hard as other schools were, and pay the price for it, and had to work very, very hard to get back to kind of hopefully the levels that we were at before. So all conscious of that. Now, there's still a lot of good people involved and a lot of good people on the ground, but there are worries, and a lot of things were highlighted over the winter that are legitimately concerning and of worry to I think genuine Clare hurling people, and there are plenty of those that aren't happy with what's come out over the winter.
And if we were to focus on the current team, a very disappointing start against Antrim, but maybe there are a certain amount of factors in there whereby, a massive travel, I'd say it was the guts of 4 hours each way. Maybe Antrim had the step in terms of a couple of weeks training. A few things probably, like I thought you were denied a penalty at one stage, a sin bin type penalty at one stage in the game. Avery Quilligan made a mistake for a goal. Then the performance against Wexford, I thought you were in great shape for a long spell until Liam Curry got sent off. And then obviously the last day out against Laois, good to get a win on the board as well. So where do you think Clare are at in terms of just right now in their league form?
Yeah, well, listen, Shane, the Antrim was the worst possible start, but going up there is not easy. And listen, hats off to Antrim. I think they've got to take huge credit for sensing that the opportunity was there and good enough then to capitalise on it and take it. I mean, listen, I thought Clare started well. I mean, look at Avery wouldn't have been happy with the goal, and it came at the worst possible time, and just gave Antrim maybe that shot of belief and confidence that maybe look at the surprise was on, and credit to them. Look, it was clearly a wake-up call for everybody, in the Clare camp, whether that was players or management alike. And I think that the most important thing, Shane, was that you got a response and got a performance against Wexford, and you got that until the sending off. And I think then, as you said, look, maybe we just lost our shape, and the lads were very, very disappointed not to have got something out of the game and held on for the win. But at least the performance was positive, and a good win over Laois. a couple of weeks ago. Again, hopefully has us back on the right track. But the Dublin game this weekend is a massive game for us, and a big challenge, and a bigger challenge maybe than Dublin were last year. I mean, I saw a chunk of their game against Kilkenny, and really the water break in the third quarter came at the worst possible time for them, because they had, they had the momentum at that point in time. They were on a roll, hurling well, and Kilkenny, the break came for them at a time when they were able to wrestle control back and get the win. So it's not going to be easy this weekend. And obviously we've Kilkenny then, the following week. So, we'll be a lot wiser as to where we are after these two matches. I think the big thing again, Shane, is that we can't afford to be without, the David McInerney's, the Tony Kelly's, the Colm Galvin's, the John Collins. And clearly we didn't have a couple of those guys available last season. And we don't probably have the same reserves, to not be without those guys. But if Brian can get his best 15 on the field of the championship match against Waterford, I'd be confident that we give a good account of ourselves, and we won't be that far away.
Yeah, I think some people have been impressed by some of the players. Like Aidan McCarthy always kind of stood out as somebody who would come along and make a good impact. When he was maybe started out full forward against Wexford, didn't really go his way. But once Tony Kelly went off injured and he moved further out the field, he looked really good. Mark Rogers has shown some good spots. Colm Malone has continued his form from last year. Shane O'Donnell is looking good. Diarmuid Ryan is looking good. Like, there are a lot of positives for Clare on the field.
There are, yeah. And I mean, look at Aidan McCarthy has, he's got a lot of the right tools. He's a good attitude, good player. Mark Rogers is a guy I'm really excited about. Shane, I mean, listen, he was brilliant for the minors a couple of years ago. I mean, absolutely top class now. I mean, to me, he was one of the outstanding minors in Munster, and he's got that finisher's instinct. That Paul Flynn like ability that you might contain him for 59 minutes, but you get one chance in the 60th and he stick it in the net and win the match for you. He has that X factor. Now again, listen, physically, the way the game has gone and the strength and conditioning levels, the way they're at it probably takes younger guys coming in now longer maybe to be able to physically win their own ball in that. But Rogers, as I said, I'm just really hopeful that he steps up this year, and that I think Brian, hopefully will give him his chance and give him the opportunity to show what he's capable of. But he is certainly one for the future. Shane Meehan again, came on against Wexford again as a young player, but he's, again, and this season maybe a year or two soon for him. Again, he's only 19, I think. But he's again, Shane, a really exciting player, quality hurler. So look, there is talent. There's no doubt about that. There's talent, but we might have to wait a year or two for these guys, before their levels. For example, that Tony operated at last year, and like Clare, if he can repeat and hit those same heights that he did 12 months ago, well then Clare will feel that look, they have a chance, yeah, in Munster.
And do you think Tony Kelly's on form when he's on form is the best player in the country? I mean, listen, that's a hard question. I mean, look at TJ Reid at his best. I mean, has been so consistent for Kilkenny. I mean, TJ's 33 and 118 last weekend. No sign whatsoever that his standards or he's dropping off the level that he's been at. I mean, look at Haggerty and Tom Morrissey, the level they played to last year. Shane was phenomenal. I mean, okay, Haggerty was hurler of the year, but Morrissey was unbelievable. Morrissey would have been a lock for hurler of the year in any other campaign. If when you look at the points that he scored and the amount of ball he was on and the impact that he had, I mean, he was phenomenal. And it was just that Haggerty was just slightly ahead of him. So look at often like the hurler of the year, the best hurler in the country is often it's the team that wins the All Ireland. But Tony is up there, and as I said, like he was, I mean, unbelievable. I mean, against Limerick, like he was obviously superb. But I mean, some of the scores he got against Wexford were outrageous. And ridiculous, yeah. And I think it was Micheál Dunn who was on commentary, and more or less said as such. And he's a joy to watch when he's flowing like that. I mean, he's just one of those guys that I think people just appreciate. So hopefully, I know he worked incredibly hard last year, and again he looks like he's in great shape again. Just now was that niggly injury that hopefully he'll be able to shake off ahead of the championship. But on his day, Shane, he's obviously massive for Clare, and he's in that conversation. I know you have to go now, but just the last one, maybe in 20 or 30 seconds. John Conlon at centre back, or could he play up front with Aaron Shanahan, two bulls up there, or do you need a bit more variety?
Yeah, listen. I suppose look at it. It gives you the option of going, route one. I suppose. I mean, listen, John. In 2018, I mean, he was, as the focal point of that attack, Shane. I mean, look at the battle he had with Dahi Burkus was in that semi-final in Croke Park. Was one of the matchups of the year. And obviously, look at he's come back from that crucial injury, and hopefully he can return and regain that form that he had. I'm not sure what the long-term plan is. Whether the centre back experiment is going to continue. Look at Brian. Obviously, has his reasons, and maybe he believes he's the long-term solution there. I really hope that Shanahan steps up. If Shanahan can deliver, we've seen snippets, Shane. I mean, you saw it against Watford last year. I mean, he was electric at times on the ball, but he hasn't done it consistently. And you just hope that he can just throw off the shackles and find that consistency and add that consistency to his game. Because if he does, he's a handful for anybody. He's a huge man. He's strong. He's quick. He's accurate. He's a good finisher. So look at Clare. For Clare to perform, I mean, John Conlon, Shanahan, Shane O'Donnell, Tony, those guys need to play well. But if they can, they can cause problems for any backline. And as I said, I'm hoping that if we get all those guys and get Dave McInerney and Colin Galvin back to their best form, we give Liam Cahill and the Waterford players a few headaches. On the 26th of June, I think it is when they lock horns in the championship.
Brilliant stuff, James. I hope we'll chat again soon.
Cheers, Shane. Okay, look after yourself.